We have joined the Libyan people in demanding that Gaddafi must go, and with our allies has yielded quick, aggressive steps to pressure and isolate Libya's leaders. Our combatant commands are positioning assets to prepare to support these critical civilian humanitarian missions. And we are taking no options off the table so long as the Libyan government continues to turn its guns on its own people.
Muammar Gaddafi clearly lost the confidence of his own people and the legitimacy to lead. Instead of respecting the rights of his own people, Gaddafi chose the path of brutal suppression. Innocent civilians were beaten, imprisoned, and in some cases killed. Peaceful protests were forcefully put down. Hospitals were attacked, and patients disappeared. A campaign of intimidation and repression began. In the face of this injustice, the United States and the international community moved swiftly.
Libya, where the bodies of Muammar Gaddafi's son and 3 grandchildren reportedly killed in a NATO airstrike have been...
So, I mean, that is the land of unconfirmed...
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No, I'm sure it did.
Mark Almond, a visiting professor of international relations at Bill Kent University, says things are going to get worse in Libya as NATO may have underestimated Gaddafi.
The Brother Leader addresses the students of Oxford University on Africa in the 21st century. May 16th, 2007. Good evening to you all. I thank the organizers of this meeting with the faculty, students, and Students' Union of Oxford University. It is my hope that we continue to meet from time to time to reflect upon the social, economic, and political crises and challenges that plague every part of the world. You requested me to address the question of Africa in the 21st century. My hope is that what I am going to say will not only benefit the Africans or the students of Oxford University, but will also be of value to the whole world. During the bygone era of the so-called Cold War, the major powers, namely the USA, USSR, the Eastern Bloc, the Western Bloc, NATO, and the Warsaw Pacts, were competing over Africa. That conflict and competition had very negative and harmful consequences on Africa and the whole world. Africa was severely affected by those conflicts. It turned into an arena for an ideological struggle. The competition between the US and the USSR for military and political influence shaped the continent. So did the rivalry between those who sought to monopolize its resources and obtain the largest number of lackeys and clients. The struggle between East and West was indeed fierce. Its coveted prizes were Africa's raw materials and having African countries as allies in international fora. We were the victims of that struggle. The world drew no benefits from it either. All that happened was the creation of an additional battlefield. Traditionally, the conflict used to be in and on Eastern or Western Europe. Then it was extended to Africa. Africa was divided into countries allied with either the Eastern Bloc or the Western Bloc. Like it sapped the energies of the major powers. That conflict exhausted Africa. Both the US and the USSR squandered enormous resources in order to dominate the largest possible part of Africa. That reflected negatively on world peace, stability, security, and economy. Revolutions, wars, and fighting erupted. Acts of violence, assassinations, and physical liquidation took place. Though not the same degree, similar things happened in Europe by way of conflict, Cold War, and occasionally hot wars. The conflict was over Europe, like it was over Africa, and in particular, North Africa, and more specifically, the place we are in right now. What I mean is that when a continent like Africa or Europe finds itself the theater of a hot or cold war between major powers, that situation is bound to have extremely negative consequences, both regionally and globally. It is therefore my ardent wish that the world, through this meeting, will draw the necessary lessons from the past experience. I also hope that it will desist from such practices. Europe used to be divided. There used to be a military confrontation between its eastern and western parts. Now could be said that Europe has been united. Its unity is a factor that contributes to great political, economic, and psychological stability. Now Europe acts as a buffer zone between the Russian Federation and the U.S. It must remain peaceful, united, and a zone of separation rather than confrontation. Now I return to Africa, our main subject. Africa has been rid of the conflict that plagued it during the Cold War. Most regrettably, the signs of a new struggle over Africa have become clearly visible. It might take us back to the tragedies of the past. What is happening now is the emergence of a conflict between China and the U.S. over Africa. It is my duty to be the first to sound the alarm against this menace. This subject is being broached very timidly and hesitantly. It is like someone who is suffering from a disease but decides to ignore it until it's too late. I do not wish to hide the truth from the peoples of Africa or of the whole world. A new conflict is emerging in Africa. It will take Africa back to being an arena of competition between the major powers. That conflict is likely to drain the energy of its main protagonists, the U.S. and China. Let me describe clearly the approach taken by each of those two countries. America is taking a harsh, rough approach to Africa. It is coming in with soldiers, weapons, and military bases. It is seeking military bases and an American military command in Africa. It grossly interferes in the internal affairs of Africa. Human rights, which are not given any attention inside the U.S. itself, are used as a pretext to penetrate Africa and to exert pressure on it. It trumpets human rights and democracy despite the fact that democracy does not exist in America or elsewhere. It talks of good governance while in reality there is no such thing. It interferes in each and every aspect of internal affairs. If a lackey of America or an agent of the CIA is apprehended or investigated, America demands to know every detail: where that person was incarcerated, what happened to him, and why. Is there any country in the world that could request similar information from America about one of its own citizens under similar circumstances? Of course not. Then how could America arrogate such right to itself? This is America's harsh approach to Africa. China and the U.S. are competitors. They both wish to colonize Africa and benefit from its wealth. However, China is taking a soft approach. China does not lecture African countries about their system of government, human rights, freedom of expression, good governance, or such the like. China never interferes in the internal affairs of other states. It does not bring in soldiers, military bases, or military command. More than 600 Chinese corporations are penetrating deep into Africa. Some Chinese communities have started to settle in Africa. This is China's soft approach. Because of that soft approach, Africans are welcoming China warmly. This will no doubt be to China's benefit. Africans are wary of the U.S. because of its harsh approach. This is proof of the folly of American policy. The U.S. is ignorant of the world. It always acts foolishly and erratically, as was the case in Vietnam and Somalia in the past, and as the current situation in Iraq proves. America always acts foolishly and erratically. It is always ignorant of the region where it decides to wage war. Therefore, it always loses. It would seem that China is fairly aware of the psychological correct way to approach Africa. It has come in peacefully. It is establishing itself peacefully. China will win in Africa. This is the alarming fact that I wish to state loudly and clearly. Nobody is talking about it. Some believe that we should bring China to our side against the American Goliath. There is a colonialism that imposes itself by force and another that uses gentler methods. There is a soft and a harsh colonialism, but in the final analysis, colonialism is one and the same. As I said, there are those who welcome China. We all seek a deterrent against the harsh approach of American penetration. This makes us take China's side. However, China must know that we are aware that it could turn into an imperialist power. If it wishes to settle in Africa or to plunder Africa's resources at a low price and sell its manufactured products at an exorbitant one, it will turn into a colonial power. There are a few in Africa that lean towards the U.S., but if a referendum is held, China will win. The majority is afraid of America. In view of its past conduct in other parts of the world, people are wary it might impose its military presence and gross interference in all internal affairs. The U.S.-China rivalry is one of the issues we currently face. Another issue is that of the African Union. If Africa manages to unite like Europe, this will be to the benefit of the Africans and the whole world. The fact that Europe is no longer a divided area of confrontation and conflict between two opposing blocs, nor a powder keg that could explode at any moment, has benefited Europe, its inhabitants, and the whole world. I am aware that American forces that occupied Europe in World War II are still there. This is a threat to peace in Europe, the Mediterranean, and the whole world. I hope it will cease to exist. However, it is a European concern. Europe is now a political and economic asset for itself and the whole world. The united Europe, with its common currency and policies, is a stabilizing factor in the world. We would like to see the same in Africa. We would like to see a common currency, a single central bank, and a common security policy. The single African market with unified policies of imports and exports will boost the world economy. Currently, there are 50 states, each with its own currency, central bank, and distinct economic system. This makes us of no consequence. What is the combined value of the economies of Malawi and Guinea-Bissau in relation to the major blocs? How could a giant like the EU, US, China, or Japan waste its time in negotiation with a delegation from Gambia that wishes to buy 10 cars? If a representative of the whole Africa market comes along with an offer to import 500,000 cars, the situation becomes totally different. This is a client who deserves the time in view of the volume of the transaction proposed. Who is going to devote their time to negotiate a business deal with Gambia, Madagascar, Malawi, Guinea-Bissau, or even Libya with its oil wealth? It is a waste of time for anyone to negotiate with or enter in any transactions with such tiny economies. The fragmentation of Africa does not serve the world economy or the major markets. Just imagine if one of those giant economies is to negotiate with the African Federal Minister of Foreign Trade. This will be far more beneficial for the world economy in view of the sheer size of the single African market and its needs. I hope that the major players and the world will understand this fact. I hope they will help Africa to achieve its unity and to establish the United States of Africa. This will contribute to world peace, security, and stability. It will bring huge benefits to the world economy and to China and America. We welcome Chinese, American, European, and Japanese commercial enterprises. However, they cannot settle our land or attempt to colonize it. Neither can they terrorize, blackmail, or exploit us. That we can never accept. We, Africans, are different in this day and age. We have world-class scientists and experts. We can no longer be fooled by the little tricks used on us in the past. Astronomical sums are spent on the production of weapons of mass destruction, ICBMs, nuclear weapons, and aircraft carriers. Equally mind-boggling amounts are squandered on military bases and armed forces. Just imagine if those who indulge in such evil spending decide to allocate a part of it for us in Africa. Just imagine if America, Europe, Japan, and China worked with us to build the Anga Dam in the Congo. It would generate enough electricity to light up the whole of dark Africa. The huge surplus would be exported to Europe via North Africa and to Asia via Egypt. Why can they not allocate a few $1 billion to help us accomplish this beneficial humanitarian work? Is this not better than military bases and armed forces? Is it not better than the talk of human rights and good governance? What is good governance and what is the freedom of expression? We do not even have paper to print newspapers where we could express our opinion. We do not have broadcasting stations to transmit our viewpoints. We express ourselves by screaming, wailing, and howling with pain. We have only the freedom of the expression of the agony. An example of that agony is what we feel at the loss of Lake Chad. I submitted a paper on Lake Chad to the Earth Summit in Johannesburg. Only 1/10 of the lake is left. 9/10 of it is gone. This is a major environmental disaster for Africa and the world. Can they not come to help us save the lake? We can construct some conduits from the rivers of Congo, Central Africa, and Cameroon. We can clear the root of the sand and trees that obstruct it. Thus, Lake Chad will be fed once again by the waters of those rivers. You can see my paper in the website www.algaddafi.org. I appeal to the world to join us in saving Lake Chad and in building the Anga Dam. This way, we would generate electricity and save one of the lungs of the world. There are two lungs that give the world its oxygen. These are the Amazon rainforest and the forests of the Congo. Drought, desertification, the misuse of rivers, and the destructive conflicts in the Congo have not allowed us to save that lung that belongs to the whole world. I renew my appeal to the world to save it. These are some of the issues to which I wanted to draw the attention of the world. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise some of the questions that no one had dared to raise concerning Africa. If you have any other questions about other parts of the world, please feel free to post them. I have the green book and the white book in front of me. This being a university lecture, I will accept any questions from the students and the faculty of Oxford University.